listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Welcome to the GM Shuffle. Dave Ross, Geoff Schwartz. Of course, it is presented by VSiN and DraftKings. The crown is yours. Geoff, great to be with you again. And you're going to be with us here on the GM Shuffle all the way through the draft. I cannot believe it. Just 10 days from our conversation here on a Monday. It comes pretty quickly, my friend.
Yeah.
What do you think these teams are trying to do now? We'll get into some of these draft needs and positioning and those sort of things. Are there more smoke signals still being sent out there by executives before they jockey for position here?
I don't know about that, about smoke signals. Obviously, and don't let them fool you. They read all the media reports, okay? So if they claim they don't read the internet or they don't read social media, that's a lie. They all read. Now, what do they do with that information is different for every team. But I think right now it's about just finalizing your draft boards, right? You're doing your final medical evaluations, or you've done them already, but the doctor's in the meeting now. You're just putting final touches on grades. There's still some top 30 visits that are happening right now. Pro days are mostly over. There's some individual workouts that are happening. I think Will Johnson of Michigan is having his workout, I think maybe today. So like guys that were hurt are still sort of working out. But really a lot of the work I think is just done. And now it's about mock drafting, right? In your own war room. Right? What's this team going to do? What's that team going to do? What if they do that? And then we do this, and figuring out all these different scenarios for round one and maybe round two, right? I mean, teams got to figure out, okay, do we want to trade back in the first round? Those decisions now are made like now, right? Like they're not made the draft night. Of course, they finalize draft night, but just figuring out where they want to sit, what they want to do. So most of the information's in already. All the inputs are in. Maybe there's some medical. Obviously, there are situations where, things arise that happen off the field that might change between now and the time of the draft. That might change, how a team views a certain player. But nonetheless, this is where they're at. Right? It's the final stages of it right now. I think if you hear that a team knows what they're doing outside of maybe Tennessee, they're probably lying to you. I think most teams sort of have an idea of what they want to do, but no pick has been finalized yet, maybe outside of Tennessee at one.
And you're so spot on, Geoff, because maybe we have some offseason news that really might affect that draft that might not have been affected a couple of days ago. So let's get to those offseason updates that are presented to us by Smirnoff, the world's #1 vodka. Please drink responsibly out there, everybody. That news is out of New Orleans, and that I don't know that they would have been in the market necessarily for a quarterback in their first-round pick at number 9. But now with the news of Derek Carr, that his season might be in jeopardy with this shoulder injury, and that really kind of got sprung on everybody over the weekend here, Geoff. How does that affect what we think the Saints would be doing? Yeah. And does it change? Or do you think they might have been looking quarterback even if Derek Carr was healthy?
I think the Saints were maybe eyeing a quarterback. I talked to someone around the NFL in a front office who said that he thought Sanders would go 9 or 21, which is Saints or Steelers. If he doesn't go 2, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So I think they were eyeing a quarterback. But look, this is the time for the Saints finally to reset their organization, okay? Since Drew Brees has left, all they have done is push money down the line, while telling us they're smarter than everyone else, while telling us they know how to manipulate the cap and no one else knows how to do it. And they continue to be in the red each and every year. And their team gets slowly worse every season because they have to release the veterans, and the young guys just haven't developed at the pace they want them to. Now, there's some young players there that are very talented. Guys were hurt last season. It's part of why they weren't as good as they could have been, especially after the fast start. But look, even in next season, 2026, they are in the red for cap space. Effective cap space, negative $30 million. That doesn't include the draft picks that are that have been that will be added to the salary cap once this happens. And it's time for them to finally reset. It's time for them to say, okay, even if we're not drafting a quarterback at 9, let's draft an impact player somewhere. Carr's not going to play this season. Let's sort of just reset, get rid of all the veterans, and try to start next season in a more positive light. If you bad this season, which I know Kellen Moore doesn't want to be bad, I get it, but next year the quarterbacks appear to be a little bit better. You'll clear yourself with Derek Carr and just be done with it. Like they need to reset at some point. They put it off for years and years and years now. This feels like the opportunity to make it happen after the Carr announcement of his shoulder injury.
So possibly, and again, you look out there in some of the books, the total for quarterbacks taken in the first round. Remember, 6 went in the first 12 picks a year ago. It's juiced heavily to the over 2.5. That's it, though, right now in the marketplace at minus 475 to get 3 quarterbacks selected in that first round. So maybe that changes the equation here for the Saints. What about the Browns? Sitting there at 2, and it does sound like they're going to pass from Shedeur Sanders because the odds-on favorite at over $3 betting in the betting markets right now is Travis Hunter at 2. The news that they signed Joe Flacco, and he's going to come back for 1 year with Kevin Stefanski. What do you make of that news? Are they really going to enter the year with Joe Flacco as the starting quarterback?
Sounds like it. Or they're going to go with Milroe or Quinn Ewers or someone top around 2. It's so interesting, right? Because I think we view this quarterback draft as Cam Ward, right? And then Shedeur and then Jackson Dart, sort of 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
But even those guys, if you're grading them, would be below any of the guys drafted in the first round last season, right? Especially top of that draft. I think you put them all behind Bo Nix. So it's not a very talented quarterback draft. And the Browns are passing at 2, potentially in Sanders, to draft even a less talented quarterback in the second round. Like Sanders has as his faults, obviously, but you put him in this offense, this Browns offense, he can flourish. Now you're telling me you're taking a flyer on Milroe or Ewers or Tyler Shuck? Like, no. Why even do that? If you're passing Sanders at 2, right? Just pass on a quarterback this season. But then the Browns are wasting another season with a roster that is good. You're wasting another season of Myles Garrett. If you're wasting another year with Joe Flacco back there. We saw Flacco last season. The Colts tried to give him that job last season, right? Anthony Richardson, you're not playing well. And like after 2 games, you're like, we can't even play Flacco. Let's go back to Richardson. And now Flacco's going to re-emerge what he was 2 years ago in Cleveland when he won Comeback Player of the Year. Erroneously, by the way. I still can't believe that's one of my worst beats ever. I laid a hefty price on DeMar Hamlin. I'm never going to be over this, right? A guy died on the football field and came back to life. It wasn't Comeback Player of the Year. I don't know what more do you have to come back from. Nonetheless, I just don't think Joe Flacco's any good. Even that year he played a shortened season, right? He came off the bench, end of the season, a much more talented Browns team, just sort of managed the offense, did a good job. This is we're 2 years from that. We saw him play last season.
Yeah.
So I don't like the Browns plan. And look, the ultimate we don't know, to be fair, we don't know. Are they trading for Cousins? Because if they're trading for Cousins, it all makes sense in my mind, right? It all makes sense. We just don't know that right now.
Fascinating. By the way, that's why I cannot stand those markets, Geoff, because it's all narratives. There's no criteria for those awards. You're right about the Joe Flacco going back with DeMar Hamlin. Like, what are you coming back from? Coming back from being bad, being out of football, and that's what you came back. It's so debatable either way that those markets drive me crazy because I have to try to figure out what the voters are actually voting on. To the point about the quarterback class, Geoff, I want you to hear this quote. This is from John Schneider there in Seattle in the GM. He spoke about this class because last year, obviously, with the 6 quarterbacks in the top 12, was looked at as a historic class in the NFL. He said, quote, "I'd be careful when you hear people say this isn't a great draft for quarterbacks. I think it depends on the team, the player, the quarterback, how you're going to acquire him, and when you're going to acquire him." To that end, they are returning Drew Lock back there in the mix. Remember, they have moved on from Geno Smith. They traded him to the Raiders in this offseason, so they still have Sam Howell. And, of course, you bring in Sam Darnold. So I don't think this means that they're done if that's the quarterback room now with Howell, Darnold, and Drew Lock. Yeah. But what do you make of those comments by Schneider that really, depending on where you're drafting, you can still find value maybe in this quarterback class?
That's an excellent word salad answer. That's like a perfect answer that means nothing but says a lot of words and whatnot. I mean, yeah, of course. If you drafted Cam Ward at 23rd, that'd be great value, right? Like I get that general idea of what he's saying, but what is that? That doesn't mean anything, right? It doesn't. That quote doesn't mean anything. Yeah, I mean, the draft is all about finding value. If you draft Shedeur Sanders at 21 instead of 2, yeah, you found value in Sanders. Doesn't mean he's good or will be good. So, of course, everything, like you said, I think it depends on the team, the player, the quarterback, and how they're going to acquire him and where you're going to acquire him. That's for every draft pick. It's not just a quarterback-specific thing, right? If you draft an offensive lineman at 27 and he could have gone 15, and you need a left tackle, that's an A+ grade for you. So I think that's a whole bunch of nothing, to be honest with you. I think it makes no sense for him to go out and just say these quarterbacks are not great as high as last year's quarterbacks. But if you look at the mock drafts, you look at the big boards, you look at the people you trust in the industry to give you that information, I think you'd be hard to find anyone who had Cam Ward graded higher than Bo Nix. I mean, maybe. I doubt it. Michael Penix, I don't think so. So, I would be near 100% certain Shedeur Sanders is not graded higher than any of those guys last season. Maybe Cam Ward sneaks in somewhere. So, yeah, I mean, that feels like a whole lot of nothing from him. But I get it, right? Value is most important in the draft.
Right. You got to find that value, especially if you go back like 3 years ago, right? There was only one quarterback drafted in the first round, and that was Kenny Pickett. And obviously now he's resurfaced in Cleveland this year with Joe Flacco. But like that was it. And it was clear to see that was not a great quarterback draft. It just wasn't. So Schneider couching it that way does sound like a way like, hey, if we do take a quarterback late.
I can't imagine taking a quarterback. I mean, what? A quarterback in the first round or like in the second or third or fourth round? I mean, maybe here's the thing about quarterback though. Look around the NFL right now, the starting quarterbacks National Football League. Most of them are first round or high second round picks.
Right.
Like that is what the draft is. Yes, you can get lucky and you can end up with a quarterback like a Dak Prescott, who's a fourth round pick, correct?
Fourth round pick. Yep.
You go through Buffalo, right? I mean, first round, Miami first round, Jets first round, I guess. Patriots first round, Baltimore first round, Pittsburgh, who knows? Bengals first round, Browns, who knows? Texans first round, Colts first round, Jacksonville first round, Tennessee will be first round, right? Chiefs, Chargers, Broncos, Raiders. Wow. I guess Geno, third? No, Geno was a first round pick, right?
First round pick. Yep, first round pick.
Second round pick. There we go, right? Then we got Commanders. And like, look at every team. They're all first round picks. Lions, Vikings, Packers, Bears, first round picks, Bucks, Falcons, Panthers. So the idea that you can just, yes, a fourth round pick, you can find the diamond in the rough. You did that in Seattle with Wilson. But if you rely on that guy to be your starter, your star, it's not going to happen.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
We continue the GM Shuffle. Dave Ross, Geoff Schwartz here on a Monday, of course, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook and VSiN. And Geoff, when you look at the needs, and obviously we'll go right to the top of the board here on next Thursday's draft, just 10 days away from the NFL draft. Obviously the Titans, you look at all the markets out there. I mean, you got to lay 10,000, it looks like right now, on any other quarterback not named Cam Ward to be the number one pick in the draft. I mean, in the months that have come and gone, Geoff, I mean, he was about, $1.50, $2, and then it's just skyrocketed out of control that it's going to be Cam Ward as the number one pick in the NFL draft by the Titans. Is there any way that changes this late? Because it does feel like, all short of giving the card to the commissioner, this pick is already in.
Yeah, look, I think Cam Ward is going one, no matter who's drafting, right? I mean, I think maybe the Browns trade to one and Tennessee goes to two and takes another player, because Tennessee has a lot of needs. They're a team that needs edge rusher. Certainly they were 28th last season in pass rush grade according to PFF, and they lost Harold Landry. Like, they need a pass rusher. Maybe you think to yourself, okay, we'll trade back. We don't love Cam Ward. We can get ourselves Carter at two. The Browns, I think it's no secret that they like Cam Ward a lot. They just have to get up to one to make it happen. Certainly possible, but I think Cam Ward is the first pick in the draft. I think if you wanted to play around and take like Tennessee to draft a pass rusher as just sort of, just a pizza money wager, something just to long shot for the draft. I don't always advise on. I'm not a fan of taking long shots just to do it, but I mean, certainly, I guess that's the only other option. The only other option at one is that, right? Is that the Browns trade up to one and take him, and then the Titans at two end up taking an edge rusher. It's not even available on DraftKings. There's no market for the Titans. So but I guess you could do the Browns. That's also not up either. So there we go. So much for that. So I think that's the only suspense at one. It's Cam Ward to Tennessee, and I don't know, a less than 1% chance the Browns trade up.
Yeah, right. It sounds like this is almost a foregone conclusion. And again, what I'm surprised by that is I didn't see this coming, that Cam Ward would all of a sudden become, you're hearing some people compare him to Patrick Mahomes out there. Like, I didn't see that level of a prospect 3 months ago. So I'm not sure what's changed since the bowl game and, stepping out in the second half or playing the first half and that sort of thing. They're all of a sudden being this, head and shoulders cut above everybody else out there. Abdul Carter is a guy that rings, it just screams to me that if you need edge rusher, which the Titans do need, and you're not sold, to your point, on Cam, boy, if you could trade down, get a big haul and get Abdul Carter, that would feel like the play to me. This is just from 1,000 view from the long view of it without being on the ground and actually seeing these guys. And I wanted to ask you about that because we're talking about Shedeur Sanders, maybe a Jackson Dart, but certainly Cam Ward. As being an offensive lineman and working with quarterbacks, whether it's just timing and everything else, what are you looking for in rookie quarterbacks when they come in?
Ooh,
like, what's the number one trait you're looking for?
Man, this sounds kind of silly because there's no way to measure it. But the it factor, I mean, you could tell immediately. And I don't want to throw players under the bus that I played with, but there were young quarterbacks that you just tell immediately just didn't have it. And then Cam Newton sort of had it immediately, right? I mean, you can feel it. You could feel it. And of course, players can grow into that. And there's different forms of leadership. And, the Justin Herbert's too quiet, right? Like, okay, but you can feel that he knows what he's doing, right? That he has that it factor. And there are guys that grow into leadership roles. There are players like Cam Newton that were good immediately in the NFL. The guys I played with just weren't. And so that's what I see sort of right away. Like, do you command a huddle, right? Do you come in the huddle, even if you have to fake it? Do you come in the huddle with the attitude of I got this, right? I know what I'm doing. I got it. Because look, you can come in the huddle and fake it, right? You might get the play wrong, or you might trip over some verbiage or make a wrong read or screw up the first day, but you can feel the energy in the huddle of whether the guy even believes he can do it, right? And that's what you want, I think, from your first pick overall. I am okay with cocky and ego. I think people look at quarterbacks and think to themselves, well, they have to be a certain way. And I don't know why that is. Every quarterback who's successful has some sort of ego. Now, some guys are more out there with it than not. I mean, I played with Eli Manning, who people think, I don't know, makes weird faces on the sidelines, but supremely confident individual. And I played him after the post the Super Bowls. But like, he's a guy that wasn't a yeller and screamer, but supremely confident of his abilities. And that's what you want from these young quarterbacks. I don't understand why labels get put on like Shedeur Sanders, too cocky, what? He's Deion's kid. And you want your quarterback to have that. In my opinion, you want him. Now, of course, there's a line where it goes a little bit too far. That's the fine walk you have to make. But there are guys that just is what they are as a personality. Your job as a coach to reel that in a little bit or let it out a little bit. So that's what I look for in a young quarterback. And from everything we've heard about Cam Ward, he has that. We know Shedeur has that. Jackson Dart, I would imagine. But that's what I want to see young with a young quarterback.
I love that you invoke Deion because he still has the greatest draft day quote of all time to me when they said, "Are you happy about being drafted by Atlanta?" And he said, "Yeah, because I thought Detroit was going to draft me and I was going to ask for so much money they'd have to put me on layaway." To have that presence of mind in real time, well before the internet age, he's a chip off the old block there from Dad, that's for sure. Some people believe this draft does start at 3 with the Giants. Again, we've seen what they've done in the offseason. You're bringing Jameis Winston, you're bringing Russell Wilson, so maybe they're not looking at quarterback at 3. But when you look at the G-men, what do you think they're looking at in this draft?
Yeah, well, I mean, quarterback's obviously, I think, important for them for the future, but for this season, and I think their coaching staff, and this is where there can be a disconnect between what the coaching staff wants and the front office wants, right? Like even Tennessee's an example. When Brian Callahan, the head coach, he needs to win this season to keep his job. Well, they have a new general manager. That general manager doesn't care about that. He's just looking for the long term. But in New York, you actually have general manager and head coach that are both going to be fired if things don't go well. And so you add Russell Wilson, you add Jameis Winston. Now, Russell's being paid to start. Jameis being paid to be the backup. I think that allows them the opportunity to do different things at 3. Could they go Shedeur Sanders? Absolutely. But I think if Travis Hunter is there, what an addition that would be to your wide receiving room, right? The question I have at 3, though, is what if he's not there? You have Ryan Birds, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Dexter Lawrence at 3. Are you drafting Abdul Carter? Like, is that your guy at 3? I'm kind of curious what happens there. That could be a trade-up spot for someone who wants Sanders at 3. But I think you just take Abdul Carter and you say, we got the best pass rusher in the draft. You can never have too many pass rushers. Sign me up for that. But I actually think ideally they'd love if Travis Hunter was there. That would fix the problem they have at corner, fix the problem they have at wide receiver. It would add someone next to Malik Neighbors. It does feel like, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong here, that it is moving toward, I think Travis Hunter is a wide receiver in the NFL. That feels like the vibe now, where I don't think that was the vibe at the end of college football season.
I think you're exactly right. And this idea that maybe, I know he still wants to be a two-way player in the NFL. I know you've talked about it, right? There's just the wear and tear in the body. He can't play both ways, right?
No, it's not. The wear and tear thing is certainly a problem, but here's my concern. I've seen this said before, and I'll reiterate it again. College playbooks, they're college playbooks. They're not overly complicated at times. They're not very big. Like if you're, there's no paper playbooks anymore, but a college playbook, let's say, is like this thick, right? A college playbook like this thick. NFL one's this thick, okay? Now imagine having this on offense and this on defense. How do you do that, right? How do you do? You don't right now. Even if you go watch him in college, I think very clearly he was a cornerback first, and then a wide receiver second with this package of plays this big, because he didn't do a lot from the wide receiver position as far as just didn't run a ton of routes, didn't move around very much, sort of stayed on one side of the field for a given game and go routes and some every now and then a deep in, right, a hitch, but he wasn't doing a lot of motioning and dragging across the field and motioning in this formation there and switching sides, and he was doing all that because it's easier to play corner full time and then add in some wide receiver duties versus the other way around where you play wide receiver adding corner duties. That's so hard to do. So that's why I think if you either make him a full-time wide receiver or you say, okay, we'll make him a corner with a wide receiver package. I don't know what's more impactful. I think it depends on the team he goes to, right? If you are Cleveland, it might make more sense for him to be a wide receiver for you guys. Mm-hmm. If he went to New England, wide receiver probably, right? The Giants, I think you pick. You need probably some corner. You need some wide receiver. So I'm kind of curious if he went to New York, what would he end up playing for them?
That's fascinating. Again, in the betting markets, we know that Cam Ward obviously slated to go one overwhelming favorite there. Travis Hunter is the favorite right now, over $3 to go to Cleveland at 2, and then the Giants back to them. You're right about Abdul Carter feels like the first and best defensive player that you could take if Travis Hunter is not playing corner and he's playing wide receiver. So that need really does get in there. But for the Giants, very quickly, you're okay with stacking because everybody wants to find the next Lawrence Taylor in New York. I don't know that's what Abdul Carter is. Yeah. But you trapped him at 3 overall. They go, oh, he better be LT 56.
Yeah, look, I think that the draft sometimes boils down to like best player available, right? It's a simple way to do it, right? If you have a draft board, you're the Giants, and let's say you just have Cam Ward's not going to be one on anyone's draft board in my mind. It's going to be Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter,
right?
And let's say Travis Hunter is gone. Look at the draft board. I mean, maybe Will Campbell is high enough, and you need a right tackle, and you draft Will Campbell at 3. Certainly possible. But I think Abdul Carter is going to be rated higher. Now, the foot seems like he's cleared. Now, the medicals are always, again, we don't know the medicals about what teams have on their draft board. Well, you just take the best player, Abdul Carter, figure it out. Again, you can never have enough pass rushers. You can never have enough of those guys. And so you just figure it out. Draft him and figure it out. Kayvon Thibodeau is coming up on a I think it's now his fourth year, right? Already now. Maybe you don't want to pick up his fifth year option. I think that might have already happened. I'm not quite sure. And then you have the replacement for him in a couple of years. So you just draft the best player available in that spot, and that's probably Abdul Carter at 3 if Hunter goes 2.
Yeah, it is fascinating how quickly it goes. Kayvon Thibodeau, yes, obviously still a very young man, high draft pick out of Oregon, but all of a sudden it's not drafting the replacement. It could be drafting somebody who's going to play alongside of you if you're Kayvon Thibodeau, because, and let's be honest, he's been injury prone a little bit there and maybe a little bit underperforming from what they thought Kayvon Thibodeau would be. And again, everybody in New York always makes those comparisons to Lawrence Taylor. All right, when we come back, Geoff, let's keep this going. I love this discussion here on some of these draft needs. Let's get to 4 and 5. Certainly the Patriots at 4 and the Jaguars at 5. That's next year on the GM Show.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
We are back on the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Dave Ross alongside Geoff Schwartz here on a Monday. Let's keep going down the board here a little bit, because obviously we talk about 1, 2, 3 a lot. And we understand why, because that's where all the eyeballs go to begin the NFL draft here next Thursday. But at 4, there feels like there's a lot of eyeballs on Mike Vrabel, year 1, taking over there in New England. And I think people are generally excited about this team. He's going to inherit Drake May as his quarterback in his second year. But when you think of Vrabel and what he might want, the influence on the front office, where do you think they go at 4? Because I think our brains always go either offensive lineman or defense when it comes to Mike Vrabel.
Well, I mean, have you seen the Patriots offensive line right now? I mean, I just don't know how they escape the first round without the ability to basically choose their offensive lineman. They want a left tackle. I mean, right now you look at their depth chart, not great. They brought in Morgan Moses, right, to play right tackle. They got they have a center in Bradbury. They brought, drafted Cole Strange. They got Mike at right guard. They need a left tackle. And remember, the goal of this year, I've said this many times about a couple of these teams. I'll repeat it again for those who haven't listened to me before. If you're the Patriots, you're the Bears, to end this season, the 2011 season, you have to know your quarterback is the guy or is not the guy, okay? And that might take weeks to figure out. Like, yeah, the Bears want to make the playoffs. Unimportant for this season. The Patriots, they want to unimportant, right? What's important is knowing your quarterback is your dude to build around him in year 3 and year 4 when he's still very cheap. And New England has to put pieces around their quarterback to make that happen. And one of those is an offensive line to block. So May has opportunity to throw 2 wide receivers, okay? And this is an opportunity at 4 to choose your left tackle of your choice, most likely, right? We talked about it. Cam Ward 1, Hunter, Carter 2, 3.
Sure.
And at 4, Will Campbell is sitting right there in your lap. I gave this out last week, I believe. It was one of my best bets, right? Will Campbell to go 4th overall. That number keeps going down and down and down. He's New England drafted an offensive lineman. It's on minus 185. Will Campbell, in my opinion, is going. He's going number 4 right now. It's minus 155. Membou, who's the other offensive lineman, plus 450. I think New England, Dave, is going offensive lineman because they have to. They don't have a choice. They have to protect Drake May.
You mentioned Campbell going theoretically to 4 to the Patriots. Is he that good of a prospect in your eyes as a former offensive lineman that other teams might say, oh, if we know that's what the Patriots are doing, and again, I don't know that Abdul Carter would drop or Travis Hunter would drop, that somebody else might want to try to usurp the Patriots if he's the best of the bunch in the offensive line market.
Probably not for him. I think it's not one of those classes. The question would be, obviously, if it's some sort of combination of, let's say it goes Ward, Sanders, and then Hunter. Like, and you're at 4 and you're in New England. Are you taking the offensive lineman or are you taking Abdul Carter? Because you need the offensive lineman. We know that. Vrabel's a defensive guy.
Right.
Is there a team willing to trade up to 4 to get, to for Carter? You trade back, you get another offensive lineman at some point in the first round, and you get an extra first-round draft pick next season. That, I think, makes it fun at 4. I'm not sure this is a draft where teams are trading up all that much. I think there's about 6 players people, I think, grade as premium draft picks. And then after that, it's more of a crapshoot, I think, of who's going to be good. And back to John Schneider's quote, are you drafted? All those things are important. After 6, I think there's 6 sort of premium guys at the top of this draft, and I don't know how many teams are trading up or down to be there, in or out of those draft picks.
It could be 2 years in a row where the Patriots just they stood pat at 3, and there was Drake May, right? They stand pat here at 4, and if everything goes, they're going to get the offensive lineman of their choice. It's really working out. It could potentially be really working out 2 years in a row for New England to maybe get the franchise quarterback. and maybe a stalwart at left tackle to help protect him for the years to come. By the way, if you have not tried Huel out there, everybody, I would highly recommend that you do. It helps me get through shows like the morning show here at VSiN. Then whenever Geoff and I are talking, I love it. It gives me exactly what I need to help me get through the day here. It's Huel.com. If you haven't done so, check it out. Use the code SHUFFLE. Obviously, the name of this show, GM Shuffle. When you use that code, you're going to get 15% off your first offer and a free gift. Again, I would not recommend it unless I tried it myself. It's really good. Check it out at Huel.com. Geoff, did want to get back to the draft at number 5 here for Jacksonville. And, we got a new coach down there in Duval, and you worry. I wonder, I guess, if the fan bases are worried, do we have the quarterback, the generational talent that we were told that we have in Trevor Lawrence? All these years later, I know that's not a position we're going to be looking at for Jacksonville, but they got a lot of needs. What do you think would be number 1 on that wish list?
So this is interesting to me because this is where I think head coach and front office might have different opinions, right? Because the front office, the new general manager there, I would imagine that Mason Graham at 5, if you're there at 5 and he's available, is probably higher graded than the other option, which would be wide receiver, right? And you look at, you say to yourself, okay, how do we get the most out of Trevor Lawrence in basically this season? This is probably Lawrence's 1 year to prove with the new staff. He's the guy. Is it drafting Ted McMillan at 5? Is it drafting Golden Fields High at 5? But is it drafting someone at 5 to play wide receiver? Is that more important to the long-term success of our team, or drafting a defensive tackle? I mean, I would argue drafting the wide receiver would be better for your team now, but that's not my job, right? The general manager's job is to grade these players and draft off of what he thinks is the best opportunity in that moment. It's a deep wide receiver draft, right? So you can say, okay, let's get Mason Graham at 5, and then maybe Luther Burden is available top of round 2, like someone like that, right? So I think they would do the draft inside out and draft the defensive lineman. Look, I'm looking at the wide receiver rank. I mean, Emeka Egbuka could be there at the top of round 2. Like there's possibilities in round 2 and 3 to address wide receiver. You might not have the same opportunity to draft a defensive lineman who can rush the passer and do a lot of things top of round 2, quite like Mason Graham. So I do think that probably is where they go, even though I wouldn't be surprised if they went wide receiver.
Fascinating, because it sounds like they got to give Lawrence more help. And they brought in Christian Kirk a couple years ago. That didn't work out. He's gone now. They've tried to do this through the years with Trevor Lawrence, but maybe this is the last shot in the Trevor Lawrence, Liam Cohen era as that begins down there in Duval to see if Trevor Lawrence is still going to be the guy 5 years from now, not just this year. Out here in the desert, Geoff, at number 6, it's fascinating to me because it feels like the number 1 wish list that all I hear about, for the Raiders is we got to get Genty. We got to get Genty. Got to get a running back, right? And I go, well, you just had Josh Jacobs. You drafted him in the first round. You didn't pick up the option, let him go, and you saw what happened last year in Green Bay. And now they're back in that same circle here. They didn't want to pay Jacobs. Do you think they do go running back now to fill that void?
So I think they should draft offensive linemen. You look at how you want to build your team, and maybe they love DJ Glaze at right tackle, but you have a Geno Smith who needs protection. You have potentially a young quarterback you want to draft next season who needs protection, and the offensive line is not good enough. Now, Colton Miller's good. JPJ at center is going to be good into second season, but your right tackle spot is right now not a position of strength. And look at where you're drafting at 6. Yes, you can draft Ashton Genty. Absolutely. Great player. He's one of the 6 guys, I think I told you at the beginning, like the top 6 players in the draft, and there's a sort of a drop after that.
Yeah.
Also a deep running back draft. And let's say you can get yourself Membou to play right tackle, right, from Missouri. Really good football player. Some teams will have him graded ahead of Will Campbell. And that obviously would be, I think, a win. And then in round 2, you know how many running backs you're going to have in round 2? You could get yourself Caleb Johnson, Trayvon Henderson, Quinshon Judkins. I'm just listing the guys. Like maybe Hampton somehow drops in the second round. Like that would be, to me, that would be better team building then Genty, and a guard in round 2. But the Raiders might not be able to do the flush quarterback. Look, my running back stance is early in the draft and free agency is kind of simple, right? I was one of those. It's like you can never draft a running back in the first round. Never pay a running back. Obviously, I'm wrong. You have to move off your take. Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, these guys have been very impactful for their teams. Even Derrick Henry to sort of an extent last season as a 1-year player in Baltimore. But the 3 examples I gave you, those guys were added to rosters that were really set on offense, right? Offensive line was set, quarterback, running back, all those things are set in place. The Raiders don't have that right now. So you bring Genty in, and yes, can he break tackles and make it right? Absolutely. But the pieces are not in place. Saquon Barkley didn't have the pieces in place in New York to be his best. He had it in place in Philly. And I feel like you're wasting that pick on a running back who you don't have the offensive line to maybe block for a couple more years down the road. So I just think that that's a problem right now for the Raiders. If you draft Genty, great. He's a great player. But who's blocking for him?
I love the take that you're having because, again, that's what I'm hearing out here is like Genty. But I'm looking at it from Pete Carroll's point of view, too, taking over there out here in Las Vegas. Like, he just feels like the guy that's going to go, no, I'm all about competition. We know how Pete is with practices. Like, if I get me a stud offensive lineman, that's what, like, build this football team from the inside out. Let's go with our O-line, D-line. And we know how big he was, Legion of Boom back there in the Seattle days. Would you see, and I know that they're going to get a running back eventually. And if one of those guys is there in the second round, I'm with you. That might be the way to go. But couldn't you see him going O-line and maybe even D-line and or corner and start rebuilding that defense a little bit too?
Well, yeah. See, here's the thing about, the draft, right? Like corner at 6 is probably early unless, Will Campbell did run today, by the way. I mentioned that. He did work out today. I don't think he ran, but I think he didn't run a 40, but he's healthy. I mean, if Will Campbell did not get healthy, so he did not get hurt, what would he? So he had 37 inches vertical and a 4.33 short shuttle, above average during position drills, very smooth. Some of the reports out there. So if he didn't get hurt, would he be the 6th or 7th best prospect? Possible. I mean, I think it's not a bad option if Will Johnson is healthy at 6. I just don't think that their team doesn't scream, I'm a running back away from making us that much better.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
We continue our NFL draft preview here on the GM Shuffle. Dave Ross, Geoff Schwartz here coming at you on this Monday. Again, 10 days to go before we get to the NFL draft. So we'll do a lot of this next week too, Geoff, and see if anything changes our opinions in a week from now. Yeah. But we're going right down the board. I love getting to some of these higher picks here. And the Jets, congratulations, Aaron Glenn. You are now the head coach of the Jets. You're kind of inheriting a mess, which I guess is why there's so much turmoil. It feels like whoever takes over the Jets here. What do you think Glenn wants to do? Defensive guy obviously comes over as a D coordinator, formerly in Detroit at 7. I think they feel like they've got their quarterback now in Justin Fields, bringing him over from Pittsburgh. Sure. So that's been addressed. What do you think they would look at 7?
Well, it depends on who's there. So if Membou is there, I think at 7 he's going to the Jets. I think you just have to do it. You look at, again, they say their offensive line. They drafted Olu last year is going to be good. The right tackle spot situation right now is just not good. Tyler Warren, I think, has been talked about here. Mm-hmm. The offense, the tight end from Penn State. Even though I've seen some. Some places have Loveland as maybe a little higher graded than Warren. Warren's more of a do-all type of guy. Loveland is more of a pass-catching type of tight end. And that probably feels like if Membou goes to 6, right, and the Jets are sitting there at 7, I think that they would highly entertain taking a tight end, right? You look at what tight ends can be on a team. You look at what the draft board looks like at the moment. You want to help out Justin Fields, you draft Warren, draft Loveland. I did make a small bite today on Loveland to be first tight end taken. I think it's worth it. If you look at, I'm trying to find the number right here. Draft specials, tight end. Here we go. I took it at plus 500. I think it's worth a little bit. I think it's worth a little sprinkle, something on Loveland. So I think Jets at 7 are going offensive line or tight end.
And that's fascinating. We talk about the running back position and kind of rethinking that, and like whether or not you're the positional drafting. Forget about the player for a second. The position. It does feel like tight end has risen in the last couple of years. That reemergence of the position and the duality of it. Do you want one of these guys, whether it's Loveland or whether it's Warren? They've got to be the Gronk, the guy that can block too and not just pass catch. Because I think sometimes you go, man, do I just want him in space to be a matchup problem, or do I need to keep him in to pass protect?
Well, it's not even about pass protecting, to be honest with you. It's about the ability to disguise, right? If you have a tight end that can do both, then the defense doesn't know run or pass, right? It helps with play action, helps with defensive personnel. Like if you have a tight end that can do both, when they're on the field, a defense has to decide, are we staying what's called base, right? Are we playing more linebackers because they might run the football? Or are we playing nickel, which essentially take one linebacker out and put a fifth defensive back in the game because they're gonna pass the ball now at the tight end's in. Well, if you don't know what they're gonna do, then what do you choose, right? If you choose a smaller defense, they can run the ball. You choose the heavier defense, then they can go pass the ball, right? You have matchup advantages if you're an offense. Now, I'm not saying that Loveland doesn't provide that just as a wide receiving option in general. I think tight ends are so important in this league because what I just mentioned, right? You guard him with a linebacker who's too slow or a defensive back who's too little and sometimes too slow. So like that what makes them so hard to guard. They're big, they're strong. They become an option for a quarterback quickly, right? Because they're over the middle of the field a lot of times. And those guys are just so valuable. Defenses can't figure out how to stop them. So that's why I think that the tight end has sort of risen, especially with, again, guys that can do both at a high level. Again, for years, you either had a blocking tight end or a pass catching guy. Right. Now you find guys that can do both. And you have to weigh that with Loveland, who is not going to be, I think, as good of a blocker as Warren, but can still be highly effective as a pass catcher.
Yeah, then that's why they say, like in Buffalo, sometimes when Dalton Kincaid, also a high draft pick, would come in, it signals let's go ahead. We know we're throwing it. Like sometimes the personnel, the style of tight end tells the defense right away what the grouping should be, depending on what type of tight end is in that game. You're right there in Charlotte, and I know you've got your ear to the ground there for the Panthers at 8. It feels like a team that's getting closer a little bit. I guess Bryce Young, we're starting to put some of those questions behind us. He's not arrived. We get that. But what do you think they do? Do they go offense to help out Bryce, or they look defense?
Well, I think every team wants to trade down, and the Panthers are one of those trade down teams. So I think they would love to do that, but that's obviously need a team to trade up. And this is where an interesting part about the draft, because we talked about the Saints earlier to start the show. Let's say the Saints sort of make it known we want a quarterback at 9, okay? And that quarterback is probably Sanders at 9 if he's there. If you are Pittsburgh and you want Sanders as well, or I don't even know who the other team would be at this moment to trade up. Maybe you're Cleveland. You do want to trade back up to 8 and draft Sanders. Are the Panthers the team to do that, knowing the Saints are going to draft him at 9? That's a thought I've had. But it does feel like the Panthers are very much drafting the best pass rusher on the board at that point, right? Is it a guy like Walker, who out of Georgia, who we've seen these Georgia players, man, they come in the NFL, they're good. Now, Walker is less refined as a pass rusher now, but he is, I think, a better football player than Stewart, or I think Green's probably too early to draft at that high, or Williams. So I think Walker is the guy at 8. If that's the way they go. Another one, again, I keep talking offensive line. I'm sorry if I do it too much, but I think the Panthers would be interested in an offensive lineman, possibly if the draft breaks out a certain way. And that would probably be a trade down for them as well. So worth noting for them. They obviously addressed that last season, but I think where they're at, pass rush feels like the best opportunity here at 8.
You can never talk enough offensive linemen for me because I learned early on, the sexy picks are always going to be the receivers and obviously the quarterbacks, but you want to win. It all starts up front on both lines of
Yeah.
scrimmage there. So if I'm a fan of a team and they draft either O-line, D-line without even knowing the play, I'm like, I like the position. I know exactly what you're thinking.
Panthers are drafted for a defensive lineman or edge player still minus 110. The one thing that's interesting about this, I'm kind of curious actually how this would be graded. So Walker might be listed as a linebacker, even though he's an edge rusher. I'm kind of because they have linebacker here at plus 150, and they're not drafting a linebacker like an off the ball linebacker at 8.
Right.
Just be careful. Just be careful on this one. I'm actually it's interesting. I'm because Walker's 100% like an edge rusher. Like he might stand up sometimes, but he might be listed as a linebacker, like his official designation.
Check those books. Yes.
Actually, this is interesting because you look at like NFL.com, his linebacker, that's his tag. That's what he's listed as a player. Interesting. Wow. I'm kind of curious if it goes off of what the Panthers list him as when they draft him.
Right. Ooh. And we've seen those discrepancies in the draft before, whether a guy's a corner or a safety. So certainly at DraftKings and beyond.
Interesting. How do you grade that? Like, how do you know if the house rules won't tell you that, right? I mean, that's actually really interesting.
You got to see the fine print on some of those for these draft props, specific position. So defense, you can be a little bit safer, but if you go in specific position, be very, very careful. I think it's a good word to the wise there. We mentioned the Saints earlier in the program at 9. Obviously now with Derek Carr possibly being lost for the season, what they might do there might change their equation a little bit. Very quickly, just want to make sure I get in the top 10 on this show. Again, we'll do much more of this next week too. The Bears at 10. And again, you've got Ben taking over there, Ben Johnson now as the new head coach. They have spent a ton in free agency, and it looks like they're trying to make sure they can protect Caleb Williams. The old regime, last year, obviously, they did take a wide receiver here after taking Caleb Williams. Where do you think the Bears look now with an offensive-minded head coach in year number 1?
Yeah. I think if Genty's there, he's going to Chicago. You look at what they built in Detroit with Ben Johnson. It does feel like they're trying to build a little bit of that. They went offensive line already in free agency. Could they draft a pass rusher here? Absolutely. And it's certainly an option. You look at, they have Montez Sweat, as we know, but the other side of the line is questionable. Again, this to me feels like we're starting to get in best player available territory, right? Where you look at your board and you say, okay, is Genty graded higher than the next pass rusher, right? And you go by that. If you think Stewart or maybe Mike Green feels again a little bit high, maybe the Panthers don't draft Walker, and you sit there and you go, okay, well, Walker's graded higher than Genty. We're taking Walker, but it does feel like Genty. This is the spot if he makes it past 6. If he doesn't make it past 6. I think we're looking edge rusher here for the Bears.
Do you think Genty could be a transformative player for that offense? Because we're always talking about Caleb. If he's got a guy now that could be a 3-down back theoretically, in that breakthrough rookie, like I even go back to Washington, D.C. when I was covering the Redskins that year with Mike Shanahan, and they draft RG3 with the 2nd overall pick. And then they get Alfred Morris later on in the draft. And people forget Alfred Morris had over 1,300 yards in that rookie year. And that really helped ease everything that the young quarterback's going through. Could that be that type of guy, or is that too much to ask of Ashton Genty if he is the guy at 10?
Oh, I think he can be, right? I mean, you want Ben Johnson, I think, talked about this on a podcast when he was when he started with the Bears, where like his goal as offense coordinator is basically to run X amount of plays with Y amount formations, right? Like just a ton of formations, a ton of different things to show to a defense. And that with Genty, you can do all those things, right? Again, we went back to sort of the idea about tight ends, like disguising versus something. Genty does everything well. And so the ability to bring him in your offense and say, okay, we're going to give you this look and do that, give you this look and do that, and we're going to give you this and do the same thing we did earlier. Genty allows you the opportunity to do all those things because of how good he is. And he will allow the offense to basically be very diverse. and allow teams and defense to prepare for different things that might allow Caleb Williams the opportunity to have different throwing windows, not be the guy that teams target so much, to open up play action pass. So I think that's what Genty would allow the Bears to be offensively.
Could be Genty at 10 to the Bears. Could be as high as 6 to the Raiders. We'll wait and find out next Thursday. But, Geoff, great stuff as always, my friend. Appreciate your time here on a Monday at the GM Shuffle. We'll do it again next week as we get you ready for the NFL Draft.